All right, good morning, Chair. Everybody is present, lobby is open, and the recording has begun.
Great. Thanks, Justin. Good morning, everybody. This is David Postman, the board chair. I want to call to order the board caucus meeting for Tuesday, July 13th. I'm joined by board member Russ Hauge. Board member Ollie Garrett is traveling at this time, unable to join us. First order of business is approval of two sets of minutes from the June 29th, 2021 board caucus and the July 6th, 2021 board caucus. Motion for approval?
I will move approval of both sets of minutes. Thank you.
Great, and I will second those, and so those are both approved. Thank you. We'll move to our item of substantive business. We're going to have a debrief on the Liquor Board's prevention roundtable that happened, and Sarah Cooley-Brush, the agency's public health education liaison, will talk us through that one. Pause. Member Hauge, did you have a question? Oh, okay. Thought I just saw signaling. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to Sarah Cooley-Brusher to take us through, and then the board will have a chance to ask questions or do any follow-up. Sarah?
Great, thank you, Chair Postman, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me to go over just an overview of an event we had earlier last month, June 3rd, our LCB Prevention Roundtable, which was virtual and statewide. The second one we've done, our first one was last year, and we moved to it out of necessity, of course, as we had an in-person regional event planned, and then, we had to scramble. We definitely wanted to, on our commitments, to check in with our public health and prevention stakeholders. And so we did it virtual and statewide, kind of off the cuff last year. People loved that they could all attend, of course, from wherever they were sitting, which is what's happening now too with board caucus and whatever else. So unfortunately, as you guys know, just given quorum, we could only have Chair Postman at that event. So I wanted to, and I think Chair Postman thought it'd be great to just kind of give an update to board caucus in general about how it went and a little overview of what was discussed. And of course, as always, I am more than welcome to meet with you, board member Hauge or whomever, to talk a little bit more about the details. These are the goals that we have about our LCB prevention roundtables. The main one is really to build relationships between LCB leadership and the prevention public health community. Public health and prevention are very low funded community groups, so they often can't be a presence even virtually, but it's a little bit easier now, and have the relationships with the folks here at LCB. And also just for LCB leadership to get out into the communities. Again, we do two of these, you'll see down here, two of these regionally and one of them statewide. So it's really about building relationships, and that's something that our former chair had really wanted to do, and I know Chair Postman is also committed to that. And then address questions and issues in real time. There's a lot of emails back and forth always between me and public health and prevention folks, so we thought it'd be great to bring people together on certain issues and to be able to answer those questions. And then again, this is a really important one, provide a forum for prevention and public health to share experiences, input, and or knowledge with LCB. So kind of, we're sharing out with them on some issues, and then really to hear from them just what they're up to in the community, but also what particular things are going on that they wanted to put an agenda together. And then just really to have an established regular mechanism. So it's not like, when are we next meeting? It's going to happen statewide once a year, and it's going to be 2 times regionally. And last year we had a Vancouver region, and we also had a Wenatchee region. Of course, those were also virtual regional. And those we waited all the way to December because we were really hopeful that we would be able to have them in person. Of course not. But this year we are hopeful that we will be able to do our regionals, which are going to be October and December, in person. And we are still TBD on those regions. But I have a question out to prevention and public health folks about where. So stay tuned on that one. The agenda, I should point out, sorry for that, looking weird. I don't create these agendas on my own. Again, given the goals that you just saw, I bring together a planning team. I ask everybody kind of on my listserv broadly, hey, who wants to help put this agenda together and be a part of planning? So these are all the folks who lent their time to us this year. We had 8 planning meetings, doing things collaboratively takes a lot more time. So we were able to have some really important input and direction from the folks you see there who were from all across the state, and really had a thoughtful agenda with a very limited time. As you guys know, 2 hours goes by really quickly. So these are the topics that we touched on. They really wanted to talk about interplay of state and local kind of regulations and authorities in the cannabis space. We wanted, they shared, and I say they because, this was the whole group, Amy included, but on a prevention spotlight on a Weed to Know campaign, and I'll share that with you in a second, and really wanted a rules walkthrough on edible cannabis products. We're always hearing from Prevention Public Health about the packaging and labeling issues, the edibles, appealing to youth. That's always a really hot point for our prevention public health professionals in the state. And then again, as you guys know, alcohol allowances were made more permanent, and not permanent, more temporary, extendedly temporary, through HB 1480. And so they wanted to talk about that, about how they can be involved in rulemaking. And then, of course, I always invite them to continue participation and show them how they can get on our Gov Delivery, how they can attend board meetings virtually, participate in rulemaking and all that kind of stuff. So I'll just kind of wanted to share some of the things that came out of it to kind of share with you guys. On this one, and I also want to, sorry, let me just give you some of the stats. We had 125 folks registered for this event, and then we had 92 people came, and it was 89 by the end. So, and I also invited our LCB agency policy work group, just so that, again, they could be exposed and have those relationships and kind of hear what the message was coming from Prevention Public Health. And then we used a new interactive platform called Nearpod that is mainly used for education forums, but has a lot of features like polling, and they could type in kind of sticky notes so that as people were making comments, you could see them on the screen at the same time. A couple of other interactive features that made things a little bit more engaging and interactive for public health folks. It's always good for any audience, but especially those folks are used to a little bit different format for meetings. And then I did do a post evaluation, and 96% of respondents, so obviously not all the people responded to my survey, said that they felt that the meeting was a somewhat or very productive use of their time. And 89% said we met our objectives that I had shown you for our goals. And that might have been a little bit low because unfortunately, a couple of days after this event, we did announce the Joints for Jabs. So we had some issues there with folks, of course, not feeling like they were as heard, which we brought folks together and had a great conversation after that. But that might have affected our numbers a little bit there. So that was the robust turnout that we had, definitely demonstrating that there is a need, and folks appreciated the opportunity to talk with us at LCB and share with us some of their concerns and just what's going on for them. We don't want this to be just like a complaints 2 hours, and so that's why we set the agenda this way. But kind of back to this point that they put on there, one of the things they shared is that to community folks, and often even people in the city space, they don't know the ins and outs of where our authority at LCB and then where the city's authority is, and kind of it just gets murky. They don't know if they're looking at wanting more protections for their community, what kind of things can they do, what kind of things can't they do. So they kind of use the time to talk to us at LCB and also share out, you see here a list of the statewide minimum standards localities can do. So they wanted to get that out as part of the conversation. And then they also really wanted to, these are all the places where there is a local policy. And then they really wanted to talk to LCB and share back some of the challenges on the local bans and moratoria. And kind of one of the asks that came out of that was, is there a way that LCB can really make it clear to cities, they had a concern and they're facing challenges with the fact that we issue a license even if there's a moratorium and local ban. So we were able to get that question and kind of that why answered for them and share what the process is. There is an email that goes out to that city and says, hey, we got this license, et cetera, whatever it is. But they did kind of ask for a little bit more robust process there. Again, once a licensee has a license, then they're very interested in being able to operate, as we can imagine. So that was something that came up for folks from Prevention and Public Health. Then we did hear from this AJ Sanders at Spokane Regional Health District about a really interesting spotlight and prevention practice that they're doing, a campaign called Weed to Know. If you haven't checked this out before, check out the website. You can see it there, or you can just type in Weed to Know Washington, and this will pop up. But they worked with retailers, cannabis retailers in the Spokane region to get this messaging out at the point of sale. And they had a couple of different messages that they focused on. You can see there, impaired driving, safe storage, risk to youth, social norms, and addiction. And they added in one about use during pregnancy along the way. So they felt like this was very effective. And again, they really applauded the participation that they had with their retailers. And I know we at LCB are always looking for those connections. And so it was really great to hear that they had done that as well. And then the next thing we dealt with at the roundtable was, as they pointed out this piece here, their public health and prevention is always concerned about the edible cannabis and appealing to youth. And so, we did rulemaking, we looked at, again, packaging and labeling guide. I guess it's been a couple years now, though, that time's gone by so quickly. And they really just kind of brought up, I want to bring this up and just kind of share some of the key elements. Sorry if that's grayed out for just a second. They were asking LCB if we would be interested in working with them a little more closely on the definition of appealing to youth, and or possibly bringing youth into the process of deciding what is appealing to youth. They wanted to know, had a lot of questions about how appealing to youth is determined, if we think about what the target market is for certain products, that when we're looking at copycats. And then they just pointed out that a number of other states charge a fee for pre-approval of products, just acknowledging the heavy workload that would be there to really take a close look at that. And then they also shared that the Seattle King County Public Health, along with the University of Washington Addictions, Drug and Alcohol Institute, is conducting assessment about what youth perspectives are on certain products and which sorts of things appeal to them. So I'm assuming that we'll hear from that when that's conducted, but they wanted to let us know that that was ongoing. So again, we heard a number of comments kind of about that, but I think it also gave LCB a chance to communicate what our rule is around appealing to youth. And Susan Harold did an amazing job going through her process and answering some questions about what we actually do at LCB when looking at the labels and how many standards we have in place and how that's communicated out. So that was a very robust kind of Q&A with Susan and Nicola from licensing. And thank you, Susan and Nicola, for being available for that. I do want to say we did have really good participation from LCB at the whole thing. And then speaking of participation from LCB, Audrey was also able to share where we are with HB 1480 rulemaking and the alcohol allowances. We heard a lot, as you guys know, during last summer of concerns from prevention about these allowances, and we wanted to be sure to have space and invite them very actively into our usual rulemaking process. As always, everyone is invited to participate. And so we just Audrey just kind of outlined what the timeline was, what our process is. And we didn't hear, again, we heard concern about similar concerns we heard last time. And again, really trying to keep the safeguards there that we had thought so carefully about last summer. And then again, the study that's a part of this, they wanted to make sure that there was going to be a real robust set of measures for the study. And also they recognized that the timeline, again, because the timeline for the bill is fairly short, ends July 2023, that the study timeline would also be fairly short. So, and reinforcing the concern that new norms and alcohol everywhere is going to have impacts for youth, but also for folks in recovery and a number of things. So again, this continues to be a concern, though we have engaged them just as a follow-up. We have been able to hear some of the voices through the formal rulemaking process on this issue. And then just kind of a couple of overall comments, and I'll open it to questions. Folks were very appreciative of us having the event and having a space kind of carved out for them to connect with LCB staff on some issues that have been recurring. And also really applauded, again, I'm going to shout out to Dustin too, particularly on this, for making the LCB board meetings virtual. I mean, as we know, a silver lining of this whole thing has been the engagement we've experienced at LCB, given that we can connect on platforms like Teams. So that's really helped participation, since most prevention folks don't have the resources to travel the in-person meetings. But it was pointed out, and I just wanted to put this on everybody's radar, that speaking at the board meetings often does include red tape from the local health agencies, since all the funding mechanisms. So sometimes, even though this is easier to do, they still experience challenges, as I know is probably for a wider stakeholder group. But they were really happy to have the opportunity. Of course, felt like 2 hours went by so quickly, and they had, more issues that could have been dealt with, though. In our planning group, we debriefed and kind of said, what does this look like going forward? And some of the next steps is keep the annual, but we're considering trying to open that up. There hasn't been an official decision yet, and having all 3 board members attend and having it be a public meeting, so that, again, we can have all 3 board members and talk to everybody at one time. So that's under consideration. And then keeping those 2, like I said, there's 2 regional ones, and keeping those to the regional. Again, when they're in person, it's actually a roundtable, right? You're seeing them and everything like that. So everybody felt like that would be good. And then perhaps convening some conversations just as they came up along the way for folks as an addition to this. But I think it went really well. I'm really happy and thankful to LCB for participating. And, we had, I really tried to have our planning group step in and do a lot of the, each section, kind of have them facilitate that. So thank you again to LCB folks who not only attended, but really did some of that piece of the agenda. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Great, thank you. Member Hauge, any questions or comments?
Yeah, thank you. Sarah, would you please send me the presentation, so for my records, and any other supporting documents that you got out of this meeting? I think this is an example of how we have to try to make some accommodations so we get all the board members at the level or at the source. I feel kind of at a loss here, taking at least one remove. Also, I really think it's a great idea to expand the process regarding appealing to children. I thought that is a really good idea, and I know we've had many issues about this in the past, and I've asked some questions that caused some issues, and it would be nice to, I think, get a little bit more precision in that process by actually sampling the target audience that we're all talking about. Other than that, what I'd like to, I'm going to expect a call from Dustin. I'd like to meet with you as soon as is reasonably possible to go over this in more detail and see what we can do to support your efforts.
Great, thank you. Can I just have a follow-up to that? I want to point out a positive that came out on that issue, appealing to youth. We did, as a follow-up, we heard from formerly YMPEP, so DOH's Youth Marijuana Prevention Education Program, kind of has a new name, but let's just go with that for now. They wrote back with some feedback about incorporating some of the the pieces of our rule onto the checklist that Susan uses. And so they will be able to do that. So some of the appealing to youth language that we currently have will now be on the checklist. So that was a really great outcome and something really easy. And thanks to Nicola and Susan for agreeing to that small tweak to the checklist. So that's positive. But yeah, thank you for your interest in additionals, and I'll look forward to talking with you.
Sarah, on the youth engagement piece, there are, and DOH's folks are a part of it as well, but there are some good conversations going on in general about cross-agency youth engagement. I don't know if you know Greg Williamson, who was at DCYF and is at DCYF and working with several agencies on trying to find a way to make that kind of more available to other agencies. And so I would encourage us to try to find some way to include young people in it, if nothing else they're not any more of a scientist than I am about it, but they're closer to the age target group, obviously. So it'd be interesting if nothing else. I do think we should do at least one of these a year as a open public meeting, and I would think even two. I know there's sometimes different reasons why we do it in different ways, but I think it's not just good for the board members to hear it, but I think it elevates the conversation for the public as well, which I think is valuable. And as I told you and told the group, I'm also happy to do it more often than we have been. I think I don't know that we need new task forces or commissions or anything like that, but I am available. And if that, group of people or some other subset wants to talk once a quarter or something, we should just do that. I mean, there's a lot on the table all the time. And it was interesting to have that conversation when we did, even though there was that sort of unfortunate timeline of then the Joints for Jabs coming out, which public health people felt they were not, and they were not, adequately notified about, and we didn't have a chance to really hear from them. Things like that are happening all the time. And so, it's just, it's good for us, good for me to just keep touching base there and having that conversation. I had one question for you. So when you talk about the process around local bans and what licensees are, what is the concern there that if we're granting licenses in a jurisdiction that has a ban, that it just adds pressure to the local government to lift the ban? Is that public health's concern?
I think that has been the concern. And again, I can connect you with somebody more specifically, but I think the fact that, that ban is kind of always contested then because somebody has this, economic reason to keep pushing at it. And I think that they're acknowledging there's just a power differential between they had enough energy at one point to, get this ban passed, but that sustainability of keeping it there, just again, a lot of the public health and prevention folks were on COVID detail this whole time. So, there's just not quite, there's an imbalance there that I think they feel could jeopardize. And also I think there's just generally sometimes at the city or county levels I didn't talk to the cities or counties. These are community folks within those cities or counties, not clear understanding about what it means either.
Right.
So I think there's just, they felt like there was an opportunity for more clarity on a number of different fronts.
It was interesting earlier this year, at some point, I can't remember what the issue was, that we had staff reaching out to local governments to talk about bans and moratoria, and they found that local elected officials in more than one place weren't even aware of the ban because there's been turnover in the almost 10 years since this has been going on. Now, there's also, reasons to look where there should be license availability, and we know that also enters into the social equity conversation. So the timing is probably right for some bigger conversation about this, because you do have local officials either who have a different opinion or just aren't aware even that they have such a ban in place, and there's going to be these different forces. So probably it's not a bad time to find some way to have that conversation and look at what our role is in that. Obviously, we don't create the ban or manage the ban,
Right.
but we have the ability to do these certificates and kind of keep it alive, I guess, is our role there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great idea. And I would just say if we as LVCB end up doing any, education or connecting with the cities and, municipalities like that, it might be nice to invite some of our partners to either tag onto that or to follow up because they may have, just what the options are, not even do it or don't. But as you saw that grid of those are the things that local, can do if they're looking at restricting. I mean, maybe not just outright ban or moratoria, right? There's some fine tuning besides a black or white. There's a bunch of grays that they can also kind of decide to say yes to some things and not to others. And we've seen that throughout the state, but I think that would be a nice complement.
Yeah. And you and I have talked about it. We've talked a little bit about it with the big group too. And just what you're saying is the conversation with public health and prevention people need not be one of yes or no. do we do this or do we not do whatever it is? But how best do we do it? How do we minimize risk? How do we address youth issues? If we get away from that just green light, red light type conversation, then maybe we're able to get more meaningful input. They feel like they've been heard in that way, and they're more part of that system. So, and I told them, I had my little note that says, who else needs to know, which is the constant reminder that that's one of the things that every state agency probably trips over itself, is there's always one more person or one more group that should have been called, should have been asked for input. And it's just hard when you're moving as fast as sometimes we are. So I appreciated their reminder in that way, especially after we reconvened after the Joints for Jabs came out. I thought that was interesting. And the only thing I'd say is, I did hear from a couple of people in the bigger meeting that, and you referenced that there is a hesitancy on the part of some of these people in the organization and their organizations to come before the board to testify something. One, just because they don't necessarily have the authority to do that on their own. It takes some sort of red tape there to get a thumbs up for that, or putting themselves as a target. And I understand that. I just think the answer to that is to try to have more public conversation about it and make it a more normal part. So I would just try to welcome them to any conversation we have and invite them to testify when we have public hearings and all those sorts of things, and do that. So, yeah, I appreciate all the work you do with that community. It's really important, and people, I know they know, but everyone should know that you were representing those interests in a really powerful, meaningful way for us. I've learned a lot in the short time I've been here about those pieces. And if you weren't, then I don't know where we would hear it from. So thank you for what you do on that, Sarah. It is much appreciated. Anything else, Sarah, for us?
No, just thank you. Of course, there's always more work to be done. If we had 3 more of me, I'm sure all 3 more of me. I mean, you guys know as board members, right? Like, of course, we could even do a better job. And I'm happy to take and connect with you, board member Hauge, and fill you in a little bit more on all these efforts. And yeah, just thank you for that commitment. And again, I always point out we're just one of a few agencies who are able to do this across the country. So thanks for that leadership. We had an inquiry from another state this week who wants to do something similar, and there was somebody just hired in Oregon. So this is a good model, and it's getting shared, of course, as good practices often do.
Terrific. One last thing, would it be possible for the slides that you showed for us to be able to post those on someplace on our website for people?
Of course, and I already sent to Dustin, so he has them for sharing.
Great. Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye. And that brings us to the last item on our agenda for the day, board members and executive assistant reports. First, I'll check with Dustin. Dustin Dixon, do you have anything for us today?
Still kind of plugging away on our options for posting recording meetings. I actually have a meeting this afternoon with communications. Okay. My point person in our IT division returns from vacation tomorrow. So we still have opportunities. We still have some other options that we're reviewing. So more to come on that, but we're still working on it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Member Hauge, anything to share?
Yeah. Delta 9 from CBD. I have been told, it's been mentioned in public, that there is an enforcement action pending. However, we have not addressed really as a board the policy that we're pursuing. I don't know anything other than that an enforcement action is pending, and that's appropriate. I should not know. But are we taking the position that this is something we're going to accommodate, or is it something that we are going to try to interdict, or is it something in between? And that's something that I think the board has to address, unless there's been a decision made that I'm not aware of.
I don't believe a decision has been made of any sorts. And what I would, my understanding is, I would take it a step back from. Sorry, it just cut out. Hopefully, we're going to be able to stay online here. I don't know if it's an enforcement action pending at this point, but we have an investigation underway. I know that, and I know that staff is working in all these different pieces of it. So maybe that does lead to a pending in action. I think that we will have that conversation when we get the read from enforcement, licensing, the director's office of how the AAGs, how they read that legal memo, what their interpretation is, and what they're finding in the field, because I think that's the piece that's been missing as well. And so I think they're doing, as you said, what they should do, which is conduct an investigation, try to get more facts, come back and analyze this. And I don't know what the right process would then be to inform us of what that is. But I think that staff well knows there's a high level of interest among our licensees about this. And my personal opinion is it would behoove us to alert everybody to whatever that position is by our enforcement division.
Okay, well, I would note that at the last board meeting, we had a representative of a license holder step up and say in our public meeting that they are buying CBD in commercial lots, administer or adding THC to it to get it above the 0.03 threshold for definition of cannabis, and then saying, oh, well, here we've got this pot of, now it's cannabis. We can do whatever we want with it. Not only is that disruptive to the market, the witness also went out of his way to say, oh, we're using a proprietary system that we're not going to tell you about. There are a number of things that I think we should do right now. And I would like to know when we are going to address this situation where we have Delta 9 coming into the system that is not coming from the I-502 marketplace.
Yeah, I think that that's the work that's going on right now, and I think it's going on in the proper place. I don't think that enforcement needs to be checking with us as board members at this point in that investigation. But if there is a policy interpretation or an interpretation of that statute that would add clarity, which I expect there will be, then, as I said, it behooves us to have everybody know what that is, and that would be of some sort of public communication to all our licensees about what that is. I think they're well aware of what's been said at our meetings. They're also have been working on their own to gather information, and I think that's the way this should be happening. And when they know what they have some sense of what the problem, I want to say what that process is, how it looks to them, then they're going to act and they will tell us about it. And if there's a AVN issued or something, it will eventually come to us potentially.
The only other thing I want to say is that I am in the dark. I do not know what the agency is doing. I do not know what policy we are following. I do not know if we're going to, on the one hand, try to interdict this introduction or whether we are going to accommodate Delta 9 from CBD. I would like to have that conversation as soon as is reasonably possible.
Well, I think as soon as we have a clear staff analysis or position on that, I think that would be appropriate. I think they know. Well, I'll just set aside. I think when they get to that point, we will have that conversation. And they will be able to share with us. We should not be involved in the investigation. We should not direct them. But they should let us know very clearly what it is how they view this. If we, as a board, have a different view, we'll have the opportunity to express that. But it would be my goal to not have us interfere at all in the work they're doing to try to A, determine what that is, and then B, how they're going to go about executing that. And I have faith that they're doing it in the right way, and being mindful of their role and trying to come up with something that would be sustainable under legal challenge, which I think is important.
Thank you.
So we will check with staff and make sure that they do communicate with us. Okay, and with that, we will adjourn the caucus meeting for the 13th. Thank you, everybody.